if your offer is, hey, I have this CD, right? If that's all you have is a CD, you can make that CD sound cooler than respectfully it probably is by doing things like this. It's like, hey, I have a CD, but you get first access to the remaining 50 CDs first, and it's signed. And then you roll it out that way.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 245, and this episode is your warning call, the last call, the SOS. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me is my co-host, Ed Isola. Ed, what is up, my dude? Are you excited to talk about all things Black Friday?
Indeed. I was thinking of what else, and I was like, this is the life raft, like the SOS.
Yeah. Here's your life vest, your life raft. The ship is sinking.
Yeah, the ship is sinking, but not sunk. Here's how you bail yourself out of not having a Black Friday offer. So I'm pretty excited to jump in because the last few weeks we've been talking a lot about selling and how to sell, and obviously Black Friday. If you haven't heard those episodes, or you just haven't had the time to put a Black Friday offer together, or if you've just ignored us as well, we're gonna kind of outline the quick hits of how to prepare and put up a Black Friday sales offer in a few days so that you can still make something of the biggest sales opportunity of the year.
Wow, you really put on a lot of pressure there to be like, in a few days, maybe you can take advantage of the biggest sales opportunity of the year.
Yeah.
But it's so true. Black Friday represents such a massive opportunity. And if you're hearing this, I think exactly like you said, this is kind of meant to be a last minute sort of SOS tip sheet for you if you're trying to get together a sales promo. Hopefully you've been working on one up until now, because we are turning the corner and Black Friday is close at hand. Real quick, if you'd like, and you want to dive in a little bit deeper into Black Friday, we actually did a workshop last month inside of the Indie Pro community, and you can get access to the replay of that workshop by joining Indie Pro today. We'll leave a link to Indie Pro in the show notes so that you can check out Andy's Black Friday workshop. Andy Hunter is one of our IndieX account strategists, and he did a rocking Black Friday workshop for indies. I think you would probably love it. We're going to get into some of the quick hits from that, and some tips from Ed and myself from some of the things that we're working on at the agency as well. So where should we start off, dude?
Well, I think we start at the start, No, I'm just kidding. But I think that we start off with the fact that before this episode, Jack and I were kind of talking about what are the four main pillars if you're sitting there right now saying, I actually do want to do a Black Friday offer. I haven't done anything towards it yet. Black Friday's next week. Where do I begin? And we kind of came up with four pillars to walk you guys through. And number one, probably the most basic and maybe predictable, is review your inventory and figure out what your offer is going to actually be. And I know that sounds basic, but I think that's something you have to do, and you have to spend a little bit of time, an hour. What product do you have? What do you have available to you? Do you have any products available to you, or do you need to get something printed, or do you need to make something real quick? You can figure out an offer based off what you have. And obviously, if you have existing merch, that's great. You could do a clear out sale on your shirts. You could sell CDs. If you have tour merchandise that's from this year, you could do it like, hey, we're clearing out our tour merch. That's pretty easy to come up with hey, here's the products I have. Let me sell them. If you're lacking products, coming up with an offer is a little bit more difficult. I think the best thing I've heard was what Shay did one time. I think she bought a bunch of flannels from a thrift shop and painted her band's name on the back of them with like wash resistant paint.
Yeah, last minute merch. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
So kind of throwing it to Jack here, but that's how I think about number one, which is figure out your offer, either existing or last minute merch.
Yeah, that's a great point. Taking stock of your products and inventory, that's a really important starting point just to give you a sense of what you could include in the offer. And then in addition to that, I would figure out, who are you going to sell it to? Are you going to try to sell to everyone? Are you going to just try to sell to existing customers? Are you going to try to sell to people who have never bought from you before? A lot of this depends on what you have to sell and the methods or channels that you have to try and reach people. So that's another question that you want to ask yourself is, who am I going to try to sell to? How long is this offer going to be available for? Helpful hint here that we'll get into in a second with regards to your rollout, but it's probably going to go from maybe the week of Thanksgiving in the US, or even the week before or the Friday before Black Friday, through Cyber Monday, or even Cyber Week, that full week after Black Friday. So your promotion might go anywhere from 7 to 14 days, but you want to plan out how long the offer is going to last and what's going to be included in it that makes it special, so that when it goes away, it truly goes away. And a lot of that leans in on the ideas of exclusivity. Who is this offer exclusive to, if anyone? What's the urgency? The nice thing about Black Friday is that it's urgent because there's a time window that it's based on. And is it scarce? Is your offer going to have some level of scarcity to it? Is it limited edition? Do you only have so many? A lot of what Ed was already saying about product might even to come into play here. But all of these things are questions and points of notice that you have to have on as you're creating your offer for Black Friday. So yeah, I think you're right, Ed. That's definitely point number one. Figure out what your offer is.
Figure out your offer, and like Jack said, figure out who the offer is going to, which is included in the offer, but like physical product and, like Jack said, emails, ads, texts, social media, warm audience, cold audience, figure that kind of stuff out.
When you have a lot of time to prepare a Black Friday offer, I think it's really effective to have different offers for different segments of your fan base, or just an incredible, irresistible offer that everyone in your customer and fan base, customers and non-customers alike, would want to take you up on. A lot of that depends on timing. A lot of that depends on products that you have, if you're launching something at the time, so on and so forth. For example, one of our clients at IndieX is preparing to release an EP that they haven't told their fans about yet on Black Friday, which is really exciting, but that's going to be something that appeals to like all levels of their audience. There's also going to be some clients at IndieX that are specifically tailoring offers to people who have never bought before, or tailoring offers to their highest LTV fans that are more of high ticket items. So there's a lot of flexibility that you can pull from if you've got a lot of planning time to work with. If you don't, you might want to get a little bit more scrappy and just work with one or two offers.
Totally. That's a great point. And as you're at this point listening, 8 minutes into this episode, you probably don't have an offer prepared. So write that down for next year. Put yourself a note to make better offers next year in advance.
We'll link in the show notes to, we did an episode about a year ago, episode 224, where we specifically talked about creating irresistible offers and the elements that go into that. Definitely re-listen to that episode. It's a really solid starting point if you've never created an offer before, let alone never created an offer at such a sales critical time.
Totally. I think once you have your offer figured out and who your offer is going to, number 2 would be make your rollout timeline, which in this case is next week. And Jack just kind of touched on that. But write your rollout timeline down and stick to it. And once you write that down, start drafting out the copy around what you want to say. I know Jack just kind of was saying, hey, it's ideal to have different offers to different segments. In this instance, you may not have that, but you can still tailor your language to different segments. So your emails won't be exactly the same as your text messages, which won't be exactly the same as your social media posts, which won't be exactly the same as your ads. So once you figure your offer out, to me, step 2 is to write your timeline down for how it's going to roll out, where it's going to roll out. And what that looks like to me is, all right, on Wednesday, I am sending an email and it says this. I'm sending a text and it says this. Make it an Instagram post and it says this. On Friday, I'm doing this via email. And you just kind of write down what's going where, and then you write the copy out around it. And that to me is step 2. That's really the bulk of the prep, or like the collection of assets, I would guess, at least when it comes to timeline and language.
Yeah, for sure. Something I want to mention here is if you are in a position where you're going to be, dripping out this offer to everyone in your audience, it might be your whole email list as opposed to just your customers, or, a dedicated offer for just your customers. If you're doing wide exposure, something you can still do to make your Black Friday offer special to maybe your most engaged or most valuable fans is present it to them a little bit earlier. We do that with a lot of our clients at IndieX, where the earliest email that goes out in a sales promotion is to the high LTV customers or your Patreon members or your membership members or whatever it might be. So they're getting first dibs at picking up this cool thing that you've put together for them. So if you need a way to make it special, that's a really cool way to do it without necessarily making a whole completely different offer just for them.
Yeah, how that kind of translates into the copy portion of this is maybe that first email that you put on your timeline. If that's going to your email list, what Jack's saying is that's going to say, hey, next week we're making this offer live to everybody, but since you're on the email list, you get first access and we have limited quantities of this offer. So it kind of makes it cool without making the offer super unique. So that's a great point around how to kind of use the copy to separate out these different offers when you're limited on what you're actually offering.
Something I really love to do in this vein when it comes to copy is, let's say you're rolling out an offer and the first people that you want to have access to it is people that are part of your membership, say your Patreon members. You might say something in your copy like, because you support us on Patreon, I wanted you to have first access to this before anybody else. So nobody else is going to see this, not the rest of the email list, not social media. It's not going on our website publicly, just you. I wanted to make sure that you had access first because these are limited edition. There's only a few available, and we know that they're going to go fast over Black Friday. So we're not opening up the doors for anyone else until, and then whatever the date is that you're launching, the wide public sale. So you're letting people know in very clear and explicit terms that you value them because they're supporting you, and because you want them to have something that's exclusive to them, at least for a little bit, to give them a first shot. I think that's a cool way of kind of approaching it. It definitely makes people feel special, makes them feel valued, and that's kind of where the exclusivity comes into play there.
Totally. And I think that, like I said, what Jack's getting at is you can make this offer. If your offer is, hey, I have this CD, right? If that's all you have is a CD, you can make that CD sound cooler than, respectfully, it probably is, by doing things like this. It's like, hey, I have a CD, but you get first access to the remaining 50 CDs first, and it's signed, and then you roll it out that way. So that's all stuff that when I put my timeline together, if I'm doing it quickly, I write the timeline down and then I go through and I come up with the segments as I'm drafting the copy. So number one was figure out your offer and who it's going to. Number two was make your rollout timeline and start the copy. Once you have all that together, number three to me is collect whatever graphics and creative you're going to need for this offer. At this point, you'll have the written copy down, but if you need pictures of your CDs or videos of you for your social posts or whatever it may be, like spend a few hours putting that together. And also just to note, like so far, number one, figure out your offer. That should be a couple hours, like max. It might take you a little bit more time to, if you have to make a custom piece of merch or something, actually make it. But figuring out your offer should be a couple hours max. Drafting your copy in the timeline, Jack said this is going to be a 2-week timeline at most. That should be a couple hours. And collecting your videos and graphics, a couple hours. So like this entire process of like this fire drill Black Friday offer, I don't know, 6 to 10 hours. Like you could do it in a day or 2 afternoons. So like that's what we're getting at here is like put thought into it, but like something that's intended to be actionable quickly for you if you want to make an offer and aren't prepared for it. So circling back to number three, which was spend the time getting a couple pictures and videos of whatever your offer is going to be if you have stock on hand.
Yeah, well said. And then when you're working with your copy, when you've got your creatives ready to go, then you're wanting to build out your email campaigns, schedule out your social posts, and build your ad campaigns. And I think something I want to note here that I think is really important is that if you're going to be running ads, let's say you're running ads to your warm audience, so you're setting up retargeting audiences, which is most likely what you're going to be doing, targeting your existing fans. What you want to do is you want to make sure that those ads have been published inside of the ads manager, Facebook ads manager, before Thanksgiving week. Ideally, like you want to get those published the Friday before Black Friday. Gives you a lot of lead time for Facebook to go through the review and approval process for ads because they can be really, really slow at this time of year. I've seen ads take 4 more days to get approved during the week of Black Friday sales because everyone is flooding the system. So you want to make sure, that's one of the biggest tips that I can give about advertising around Black Friday, is that if you even want to be able to advertise, make sure your stuff is published. You can turn the campaign off so that it's not running. Just make sure your drafts are published and ready to go. That way they go through the review process and get approved. And you can make any changes if need be if they don't get approved.
There you go. And number 4, which segues very nicely from that, is make the offer live and monitor it and see how it goes. I think what's cool about this offer is that at the start of this episode, if you had no offer in mind, you got to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you already have your offer sorted and your Black Friday offer prepped, you can kind of jump to this number 4, which is make it live and monitor. And this is always the fun part, right? Like the work at this part is done. You've done the scramble. And now you're just going to start sending the emails, making the posts, seeing how things are selling. I think maybe the hardest part about this is the ability to pivot, which is something I want to just kind of touch on really quickly before we wrap up, which it's like, say you have this offer for the CD, you send it out and nobody buys it. Well, I wouldn't send the same email again with the same angle immediately after. Like you might have to revisit your copy and say, oh, okay, the signed CD didn't do it. Maybe I slip a postcard in there and make that offer. Or maybe it works really well and you're like, hey, I'm going to actually stick with this offer. But like the ability to, once you have your plan and it's on your little rollout timeline, follow along with that rollout timeline as it comes. And it's one of the reasons that I recommend saying, leave a day or two between email sends and social posts so that you can do that, where if Wednesday you send the first email, check it out Thursday and see how it did. Make those edits before the next one goes out Friday. But just really being mindful of the fact that, hey, I have my plan, here it is, let me see how it goes. And so from top to bottom in my mind, you've got a couple days of prep and build and drafting and timeline and offer decisions and graphic creation, all those things we just outlined. And then you have the 1 to 2 week rollout period of the actual offer where you can be attentive, editing, changing, pivoting, tweaking, just really being on the ball to see what's resonating, what's not resonating, and putting more of what is working in front of people and removing what's not working in terms of offers being taken.
Well said. Yeah, I want to just add one final thing about pivoting here. You know, in a sales promotion like Black Friday where it's so time windowed, there's not a lot of opportunity to pivot, especially when it comes to things like ads. Like you can turn stuff on and off, but realistically, if you try to publish new ads, they might not even get approved to be able to go live during that time period. You're really working with what you've got. And so I think you said it well, Ed, in that like a lot of the pivoting that you can make is around your narrative, and that goes in your email copy, it goes in your text copy, it can go in your social post. You can try to get it into your ads if you find a narrative change that's necessary or you need to make an offer pivot quickly. But in a lot of ways, you're locked in with the plan that you're working with, which is why putting the legwork in early is so important. But in the situation of trying to move quickly, one other thing that you can do is you can consider additional emails. You can consider additional text messages to try and get the message out in new ways. If you want to squeak out some extra sales, you can do, a secondary last chance email or a save the sale kind of email where you open up the cart one more time after it's closed. These are all ways to kind of like extend the life or breathe new life into things as you're making pivots and monitoring how things are going. So hopefully that gives you a little bit to kind of consider as far as like, how do I make this go better as it's happening? And then the last thing I'll say as far as a Black Friday tip goes is once it's closed down, run a postmortem on the whole sale. See what worked for you. Look at your email open rates. Look at your click rates. See how your ads performed. Really analyze how much did I spend to make this happen? How much did I make? How many sales came in? Who did they come in from? Where did they come from? How much profit did I make? Would I run this offer again? These are all things that I would ask myself as I'm going through the process of closing down a sale so that you can learn from it and do better next year. So that's kind of a post Black Friday sale tip, but a useful one, I think, to make here as we kind of wrap up this episode. So I hope that this was helpful.
I think it will be. You got a 20-minute episode and about 6 to 8 hours of work in front of you. So there you go.
Well, I hope you guys dig this. If you haven't already taken action on your Black Friday sale to take advantage of such a massive opportunity in selling to your fans, listen back to the last few weeks of episodes that we've done on selling. We'll make sure to link to them in the show notes. Jump into Indie Pro if you want to check out Andy's Black Friday workshop that we had inside of our community. And we will see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Happy selling, indies. Peace out.
Feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast, say what?